Hi everybody, Haley here, and I'm super happy to get to start to show you some ways of looking at and using these creative energy moon charts. And I'm going to show you how to start filling it out today, and I'm actually going to break down the process of how to work with the elements, phases, and signs a little bit slower than I actually do it myself, just so that we can take it kind of one step at a time to it. But I'm going to walk you through all the layers using the phases, elements, and signs, and how to then use the chart to think about what your creative rhythm energy is like, or your creative moods, so that you can see how that applies to your creative practice. And as our creative practice feeds our life feeds our creative practice, and there's this beautiful wholeness to it. And so I really have found looking at the daily moon phases and moon signs to be extremely helpful to understanding my unique creative rhythms. And that is my intention in sharing this chart with you and inviting you to give it a try for a few months. I suggest at least 3 months. And if you can do more, 6 months, even a year, if you could do a whole year, you could really start to see a seasonal pattern perhaps for yourself that may or may not, that shows up, and how that relates to you in different times of your year and your life and the circumstances of your life. Okay, so to set up your moon chart, you'll want to make a few copies. And so basically what we're looking at here is this chart, obviously, all right? And down here at the bottom, we have 3 that are all kind of black circles. And those are representing ultimately the new moon or the dark moon right before the new moon. And right across from there, we have a couple that could be seen as the full moon. It's an imperfect chart. It's not a perfect chart. And I do want to say, I can't take full credit for this chart. It's I modified a chart that was a free PDF online a few years ago that my mother shared with me. And for the life of me, could not find, even though I had the web address, the website had changed. The lady who created it is still out there, Clara Bitcon. But I can't find anything on her site about the moon chart or anything anymore. And so I took her chart and modified it to suit what I like for keeping a circular moon chart in this way. Okay. So what you'll want to use, you could use pencil, you could use any pen you want, but what I like to use is to use a waterproof pen of some kind. So, like a Bic pen, a ballpoint pen could work. But I like to use these just in case I want to add a little watercolor or something like that. Or if it gets, water dropped on it, it's not going to mess up the dates and things that I write in. So that's what I use to set up my chart, okay? And then, of course, the very first thing you're going to want to do is you're going to be starting with the new moon, all right? And we'll talk about the moon phases in a moment. Starting with the new moon, and you're going to be filling in the dates. So one segment is one day, right? So you would want to Google when this new moon is. So we just had one yesterday, and that's what I'm going to be showing you on. This is March 2017. And so depending on where you were, the new moon was either on March 27th or March 28th. All right. So here on the eastern side of the states, it was at about 10:57, 10:59 p.m., depending on what calendar you look at. And so for that new moon, I'm going to go right down to the one that's on the very bottom of this chart, that kind of central black circle. And I like to write mine, I like to flip them and write around the rim like that. You get to decide how you do it. And I'm going to go ahead and write new right there. And that's how I'm starting this chart. And it was at 10:57 p.m. And then you're going to write the date, March 27th. So that was yesterday for me. So now here's the thing. If you're somebody who has a schedule that's really based on the days of the week, you might also want to indicate the day of the week, because you can see patterns with that. Like if you have something that you do every Monday, every Thursday, every Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, you might start to see interesting things about what your life is involved with, what you're involved with in your life, and your creative energy and moods around that. There are so many ways that patterns can jump out at you by doing moon charting that it's just fascinating. So I don't actually put the days of the week on mine in this fashion, but I do the dates. And so you'll start with that date of the new moon, March 27th, and then from there you just start filling in the days all the way around. So March 28th, and of course paying attention to whether or not it's a month with 30 days or 31. You get the idea. One of the things I'm doing is leaving a little bit of space here, and you'll see why when we get to, I will share another video talking about the signs and putting those in as well as a way of deepening our work with the moon. So that's why I've left a little extra space there if you're wondering why I'm not writing it real big. Probably should have said that before, but there it is. So you will want to look up the date of the new moon and then the date of the following full moon. It's the easiest way to start with these charts. It'll take you a minute. And you can do this, a little bit before the new moon is really the perfect time to do it. I always seem to forget though and kind of do it right at the new moon or a day later. If you have other moon charts, one thing you want to look at is if it has, how many segments it has on it. I've seen some online that are really nice charts, and I actually looked for one that I could just share that somebody was, was free, for other people to share. But what I kept running into was that they were charts that only had 28 segments. And you might be thinking, but Haley, there's, 28 days with the moon, right? Well, there's actually 28 to 29-ish days with the moon sign cycles and the moon phase. So having a 30-segment circle is really helpful on certain months because there can be a little bit of overlap and not enough room if you don't. All right, so once you've got that filled in, you've got your new moon indicated on the bottom, then you would look up the full moon for this cycle, this lunar cycle. And so the full moon where I'm at is on April 11th, and look at that, April 11th is right across from the new moon up at the top. Sometimes it'll vary a little up at the top here. And I'm gonna write full so that I remember which day it's full and the time. I'm looking at a sheet. Looks like 2:08 a.m. on April 11th where I'm at. Okay, so you can Google to get your new moon and full moon dates and times in your time zone and location, right? Easiest way is that. And if you're just starting the moon charting, knowing those two times on your chart is really like the easiest way to begin to dip into this and seeing how it plays for you. Of course, there are apps that will tell you. There's moon phase apps. I actually use one on my Android phone called Phases of the Moon. And then on my iPad, I have another one called Moon Phases. And there's lots of them out there. The one on Android, I don't think they have an iOS app right now, Phases of the Moon, but I do like it because it also tells me the zodiac sign that the moon is in on that day. Those are really easy ways to look at the moon phases. And sometimes you can get the full month view and then it'll have like a daily view as well. Maybe I'll just pull mine up and show you what this one looks like. See if it comes out on the video here. Well, of course, it's a new moon was last night, so it's really dark, but normally you can see the circular moon and there's little stars that move in the background and tells me that the moon is still in Aries and it's a waxing crescent now because it's one day out of the new moon, all right? So lots of ways to get that new and full moon for your moon chart. And the other thing I wanted to say, so about the phases. Really, there's a really simple way of looking at it. So the new moon is, as many of us know, it's the beginning, all right? It's planting seeds. It's the perfect time for beginning things, for making plans, planting seeds, making your wishes known, writing down your hopes, your dreams. If you have a project, something you'd like to be working through consciously in that next lunar cycle, perfect. And so the new moon is beginning, setting intentions, is how you can think of that. And we're working around, obviously, clockwise on this cycle. So this will be about the new moon, and right over here somewhere is going to be like kind of the first quarter, all right? We could look at a calendar if we wanted to know the exact date, but you get the idea. It's going to be around April 3rd or 4th, and if I look at this calendar I made that I actually ended up not using this year, but it's April 3rd is when that first quarter moon is happening. And so after you set your intentions, you move into this period of some days where you're cultivating and you're nurturing and you're supporting those intentions or wishes or plans. Maybe you're laying the foundation for them. By the time you get to this first quarter time, we're looking at like a week into it, hopefully you're taking some action, right? So we could say over here, I'll put a first Q, all right? And then as you move out of that first quarter time, you know, you're developing the actions, you're developing the plan, perhaps you're evaluating and assessing and modifying if you need to. And then when we get to the full moon phase, this energy and this time is all about, sometimes they say completion, but that's a little misleading. I actually really like culmination and illumination. This is when the time is ripe. This is when we're seeing things about what it is that we're doing. Things in our life are coming into the light that need to be seen. Energy, creative energy is often really activated in this time with that full moon. And we all know that. We can feel it, right? And so you're really going to start to see how that works for you. So full moon is culmination, illumination, a ripeness. Things are ready to be reaped or harvested, to be shared. And that's what's happening here as we move away from the full moon and into this last quarter, which will be over kind of on this side. We'll just write last Q for last quarter. And so the last quarter sometimes is a time that's perfect for release or moving toward releasing, perfect toward moving toward completion. Completion really is kind of down here, moving toward that new moon. And then right before we get to the next new moon, all right, this is a time for resting, for closure, for stillness, for listening in. And so one final thing to really pay attention to on this moon chart is when is the next new moon, all right? Because that's going to tell you when you need to have your chart done. And sometimes you're actually going to find that the next new moon is like kind of over here maybe, and there's an extra segment. And if that's the case, you can black one out, all right? No big deal. Or you might just have a little overlap on your next chart, and that can be helpful if you're like me and you always kind of put off doing your chart. So the next new moon is going to be April 26th where I'm at. And so what I noticed is that this was just enough segments. I needed all 30 of them because it goes to April 25th and the next new moon is on April 26th. So I needed all 30. If I'd only had 28, I wouldn't have had enough space for the full lunar cycle on this chart. All right, so those few days before the next new moon, perfect for resting, for listening in, for getting still, like. So that time right before the new moon is really that retreating consciously, okay? And so just with that alone, you already have this moon chart set up in a way that could be so helpful for you for noting how your creative energy fluctuates with the moon phases.